Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and my special guest is Stewart Swerdlow. And it's a pleasure to have you on tonight, Stewart.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for keeping me up so late.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. I do have a question for you. Insofar as the handlers go, do they use threat levels for a program target insofar as assessments go?
Well, that's part of the handler-slave relationship. And, there's a hierarchy. It starts with the programmer. You never see that person. There aren't that many of them, and they work directly for the Illuminati, and they aren't really in public. Now, who reports to them is called the controllers, and the controllers are generally in the public, but they're very, hidden. You don't see them too much, or they might be, a certain position in government or in a corporation. And then beneath that is the handlers, and then the masses, or the slaves, as they call them. So it's kind of like a white pyramid. But your spouse could be your handler. Your parent could be your handler. Not all handlers. In fact, most handlers don't know that they're the handler because they're programmed to keep the other person, in an unstable situation so that they're always ungrounded and easily programmed and manipulated. And even in a married couple, they could take turns being the handler and slave, back and forth, depending on who's triggered for a particular purpose. And I talk about that in my books as well. Did I answer your question?
You always do. And it's interesting, though, some of the handlers, though, like for mine, I actually met my handler, believe it or not, the guy who was responsible. Anyways, when I look at a lot of this technology, I realize that obviously the handlers have handlers as well.
Yes.
In other words, they're all being programmed. So who's the meta programmer? Who's the one that's really running the show?
Well, that would be the Pindar, who's the head of the Illuminati. And that's the head of the Rothschild family. The Rothschild family has been in the Pindar position for at least 700 years. And the other families are getting a bit ruffled and want to take a turn, especially the Windsors and the Romanov. And so there's a lot of infighting going on right now, which we can take advantage of and slip through the cracks and widen the cracks. So there's a lot going on. Plus, the Illuminati have a threat from outside of our world, which I feel will happen within the next year or two as well. So they're scrambling, and they're making mistakes, and there's a bit of sabotage going on within them. And so I think they're falling apart. My opinion.
Seems like they are having a hard time. And can you talk a little bit about the threat that's coming in from the outside?
Yes, it's very exciting, actually, Solaris. I discovered this, maybe 5 years ago. Anyway, it's in the Kuiper Belt, and I don't know if you've heard of that. The Kuiper Belt is the region of space that surrounds our solar system. It's almost like an energetic membrane around our solar system. There's a lot of debris, ice, asteroids floating around out there. It's a huge area. And beyond that is something called the Oort belt, which is another huge area of debris and gases, etc., that surround our solar system. Well, several years ago, NASA detected suddenly that there were objects appearing in the Kuiper belt, and pretty much on a daily basis, they'd say, there's another object we just found, and another, and another, and another. And pretty soon it became very, obvious that something was going on out there. So they stopped reporting on Kuiper Belt. And then in order to downgrade the suspicion, they said, well, you know what? The planet Pluto is a Kuiper Belt object. So, that's always been like that. And they declassified Pluto. It's no longer a planet. It's now a Kuiper Belt object. And then it became a planetoid. And then we don't know to this day what Pluto is anymore. Okay. But that was just a cover up for what's going on. Then subsequent to that, we started noticing on the NASA sun cam these objects coming out of the sun. That some of them were huge. And anyone who's read my information or seen my videos on simultaneous existences knows that a star in one universe is a black hole in another universe. And it's a portal or a vortex between universes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unusual for objects to come through a star like our sun. And by the way, the sun is cold fusion. It is not hot.
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing will burn up from it. Anyway, so these objects have been seen. They've been going straight to the Kuiper Belt. They've been massing. It's not just one species. It is a conglomeration of species I've never even heard of before. The Illuminati have never even seen some of these before. It's scaring them. Some of these beings are not even from our universe. They're from alternate realities.
Mm-hmm.
But they consider the Illuminati a threat to them. They don't care about humanity so much, but they're considering their own situations. You know, Solaris, our planet, Earth, is the Iraq of the galaxy. And so all of the so-called galactic civilizations out there are trying, and I put this in quote, to liberate the Earth, just like we liberated Iraq and we liberated Afghanistan and Libya and all of that, which is a whole bunch of crap anyway. So my point is, there's no space brothers coming to save us. People that come here have their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, human beings, need to take care of our own stuff. And not allow all this to happen. But unfortunately, most people don't even know what the heck's going on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a very complicated situation. And even within the Kuiper Belt, there are factions. Within the Illuminati, there are factions. Then we have another faction, the Fourth Reich, which is located in Antarctica, which is another factor coming. So it's like, my goodness, you know, when all hell breaks loose, it's a free-for-all.
Certainly seems that.
And that's coming very soon.
And what's with them in Antarctica now? Are they actually there, or is there a civilization that's kind of teleported off-world from that location?
No. First of all, let me say that the Earth is hollow, and that all planets formed like this planet do have a hollow interior, like Mars, like the Earth, like Venus, etc. And that's in my blue blood. The planetary science for that is in blue blood, if you want to read that. And so there are, and then between the inner crust and the outer crust, there are cavern systems, cave systems. So in fact, the Earth has 3 layers of civilizations. We have what we have on the surface. We have the inner mantle or inner crust groups that exist in the caverns underneath the Earth. And then we have the inner Earth civilizations. And there are openings at either pole. Now, Antarctica, used to be tropical eons ago, and there was a civilization there. But the Germans were very much anxious to develop what they call the paradise for the Führer. And from 1938 to 1944, the Germans staged in South Africa and in South America and brought materiel to Neuschwabenland, which was on the Norwegian territory of Antarctica, which is why the Germans invaded Norway, so they could occupy this area. And they built a huge underground area in Neuschwabenland in Antarctica called New Berlin. And they had several other locations there, which if you Google it on Google Maps, is shaded out so you can't see it. But anyway, there's a whole German civilization called the Fourth Reich underneath Antarctica. They are the source of many of the UFOs that are seen, especially in the southern hemisphere. In 1946, after the war, the U.S. and Canada and Britain sent a massive fleet to Antarctica, and there was a war. 50 Americans were killed in Antarctica in 1946, and whatever force they came up against was overwhelming, and they retreated after several months. Now, I went to Antarctica in 2010, and I visited some of the bases. And on one base, especially one of the British bases, there's a plaque that says that the base was built to monitor the enemy. So I said, what enemy? Are there terrorist penguins, perhaps, that live here? who's the enemy?
Mm-hmm.
They would never say. And so that's what's going on in Antarctica. And now and especially at the Russian base, Vostok. And this is not reported too much on Western news, but it is in Russian news. There is on Lake Vostok, which is buried deep underneath the ice of Antarctica, the water temperature has gone up 65 degrees.
Mm.
There are electromagnetic anomalies that are coming to the surface, and that is why many of the scientists in Antarctica are getting sick and have to be evacuated every year.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this happening every year. And the Russians, their last our winter, which is the Antarctic summer, drilled and drilled and drilled. They wanted to get to Lake Vostok underneath the ice. And then all of a sudden, the team disappeared. And it was even on conventional news that the Russian team in Lake Vostok has vanished and there's no communication and no further information. And then on Russian news, it came that, yes, now they have been reestablished communication. They have gotten to the layer they wanted to get to, and there they found a swastika flag. So, and then there was no more news after that. So something's going on, Solaris, underneath Antarctica, which is related to Fourth Reich. Now, when I did my work in South Africa, I was teaching the people there, and there are Afrikaners who are Dutch-German descendants. And I was talking about all of this, and after my lecture, a woman came up to me, and she was an Afrikaner woman, and she says, you remind me of our prophet from the 1920s. I said, I don't know who that is, and she says, well, he said that when the white people in South Africa have trouble, the Germans will come up through a hole in the Kalahari and save us. Now, that was almost 100 years ago they predicted that.
Wow.
So they knew what was going on. And if you go to Namibia, which is just to the west of South Africa, you would think you were in Bavaria. It is all German, the German street signs, German buildings, German people. They are waiting for the Fourth Reich to come. So this is the truth, and I saw it with my own eyes.
And when they show up, what happens? I mean, they're not there to support them, are they?
Well, no, the Germans are. Yes, let me tell you, the Germans in Namibia and South Africa, the war never ended for them. So I will tell you that the Fourth Reich is not in alignment with the Illuminati. They're enemies. And so the Fourth Reich is waiting for that time when the Illuminati are having difficulty on the surface, and then the Fourth Reich will come and make themselves known and kind of sweep in while all the chaos is going on. So it's a complicated situation. It's not pleasant for the people of Earth. But I also know that the Fourth Reich have an alliance with the Kuiper Belt beings. So it's going to be quite interesting.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And the technology that they acquired. Now, I know when I'm looking at the Nazi Bell and all the other type of vehicles that they created, was that due to alien technology, or was that something they were just kind of mimicking to create or simulate an extraterrestrial craft?
Yeah, the Vril craft.
Right, yeah.
I have a book. It's only in German, and it's not available in the United States. It's called Flugscheiben über das Schwabenland. And basically, it's two German journalists did in-depth study of World War II documents and interviewed ex-Nazis, etc., etc., and they found documentation, and this is in the book, that the Germans said that they had information and contact from the Aldebaran star system, which were very Teutonic or Germanic in nature, and who helped the Germans to develop all of their technology and the Vrilcraft, and even helped to prepare the Antarctic base, which is called Base 211, for anyone who is interested. And this is documented. And this Vrilcraft, even in 1938, was tested in an airfield in Prague, which at the time was now under German occupation. And at that time, in 1938, they had a vehicle that could travel 5,000 kilometers per hour. So you can imagine what they have now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so far as the MyLabs go, I mean, people were being tagged and abducted, inducted into these programs. What happens to those people? Are they eventually going to be retrieved and taken somewhere? Or what's your impression of that?
Well, that depends on the person and their programming. Many of them are sleepers, which means that they have no idea that they have this programming until they're activated.
Right.
Many of them will become what we call stalkers or vigilantes or assassin program people. So when the staged alien invasion occurs, they could be triggered into monitoring who's against the government, who's helping the aliens, who is against the New World Order, and then they target and eliminate those people. And then in most of those programs, vigilante, assassin, and stalker programmings, in the end, they have suicide programming. So once their function is accomplished, they kill themselves.
It's terrible. And how do they activate them? Once again, that's probably through color code or something like that.
It could be many things. It could be a hand movement. It could be turning a ring on a finger. It could be a satellite transmission. It could be a commercial on television. It could be anything, depending on that specific person. Have you ever seen the commercial for Lunestra, the sleep pill? So, well, I've only seen it occasionally, because I don't watch TV anymore. But the symbol is this poor woman can't sleep, and she's tossing and turning, and then she takes this pill, and as she takes this pill, a green butterfly flies through her window and lands on her bed, and she just falls to sleep. Now, we know that the butterfly is a symbol of the monarch program. In the old days, late 40s and 50s, it was a blue butterfly. Then it became the regular monarch orange and black butterfly, and now they are the green one, which is now associated with a sleeping pill. And the sleeping pill is a trigger for you to go into an altar into your monarch programming. So whenever you see that commercial for Lunestra, turn off your television. But you shouldn't be watching TV anyway.
I don't watch television. No, I went through enough with the driving that they used on me that I didn't like TV afterwards.
It's all programming now. There's not one thing that you can watch that's good for you.
I agree. I totally agree. And who was your handler, if I can ask?
Well, you mean my programmer?
Yes.
Because I've had many handlers over the years.
Yeah.
My programmer was Andrea Puharich. He was also the programmer for Uri Geller.
Wow.
And I actually did work for Uri Geller at the time in the 90s.
That's interesting.
Well, he's dead now, Puharich. But he was one of the original programmers.
Are there many? How many are there, you think?
Not many. There's not many. I would say in the world there's only maybe a couple hundred. Because they don't have to be many. Programmers develop the programs, and then the satellites do it.
Right.
They don't have to have people anymore to do it.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, this is really disturbing on so many different levels, but it's so real. I mean, this is real information, and I hope people are absorbing this correctly because, man, it's unbelievable how much programming is happening, whether it's on one, subliminal or just, this type of psychotronic stuff that they're doing. It's incredible.
People have no idea what's going on out there. And it's pervasive. I mean, you go just to the supermarket or you drive down the road and the signs along the highway are programming you or they're triggering you. The logo for the Target store, the red circle with the dot, in hyperspace, a royal blue circle with a royal blue dot in the middle is the symbol for the pineal gland. So when you take that and you put it in red, what is that telling you subconsciously? It's saying you will have sexual gratification and activation if you come into the store. So it's brilliant, really, who developed those archetype symbols for the stores. But that's what we're going to see now. Instead of logos, we're going to see archetype symbols and triggering symbols for stores and corporations.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's right. And insofar as, were you ever exposed to any type of synthetic telepathy or anything like that?
Well, that's a new term for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably have another term for that. But what is your term or description?
Well, basically they map my neural circuitry, map the electromagnetic field and the psychic abilities, and interface it onto their communication system with a playback and a live handler real time. and it's basically a dialogue that only he and I can hear that's encrypted on a signal that's interconnected in my neural circuitry where I actually was able to communicate live feed in real time. We confirmed this data. This was what happened to me back in 2004. Now I call it synthetic telepathy because it's way beyond a lot of the stuff they used to work on. Mm-hmm. So I was curious insofar as what you know about it, or insofar as what you've gone through, or maybe some of your test pilots that were sitting on Montauk in the chair.
Yeah, what you're describing actually we called imprinting. Basically it was part of the psychic driving. It's just an overlay of the matrix of the program that connects your specific outline, if you will, with the computer-generated programming matrix. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like the time travel, where if two things are identical in vibration, they are like one. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the same thing. And yes, they did that. In fact, the Soviet Union tested that on their military in Odessa, in the Filatov Institute, which is part of Ukraine, mm-hmm. but at that time was part of Soviet Union. And they did a lot of that experimentation there. And then in Europe, they did this in the sister program to the Montauk program in Alsace-Lorraine, on the border of France and Germany, where they also did this imprinting, like what you called synthetic mind control or programming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all synthetic, but that's what they're doing, and they transmit this again through cell tower, satellite, telephone, radio, your computer, television, every electromagnetic method. In fact, your electric company overproduces electricity and then dumps it in the ground where it becomes a conductor or carrier wave. And then the mind control, it attaches to that excess electricity in the ground, and it just literally oozes into your house and goes into your electrical system. And so just turning your light on, you're programming yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are getting bombarded without a doubt. And then let's not forget that we are naturally psychic. And, of course, you were mentioning now in Russia, I guess in the former Soviet Union, they actually did work on they were very much into the paranormal, so they were involved in the occult. Is that correct?
They were way ahead of both the United States and Germany. In fact, that's one of the reasons Germany invaded Russia, because people don't realize before World War II, Russia and Germany had an alliance and promised not to invade each other. Mm-hmm. But the Germans invaded Russia because they wanted the information from the Soviet technology and mind control. Right. The Russians were involved in this since the 1920s. In fact, in Siberia, they had bases, secret bases, where they were trying to develop invisibility cloaks, time travel machines, that kind of thing. The Germans got involved in the very late 1920s, but really not heavily until the 1930s. Mm-hmm. And the Americans didn't get involved till after the war, not till the late 40s. Mm-hmm. So the Americans are the latecomers in all of this. Right.
That's because of all the scientists they took. But also, what about Tesla? Now, Tesla was involved. He was actually one of I guess he would be a founding father of a lot of the technology being deployed today, would you say?
Absolutely. In fact, he developed artificial intelligence in the 1890s. Mm-hmm. And he was used by the government. And, of course, there's rumors that he didn't really die in the 1940s, that he was just removed to another location where he could be used secretly. Mm-hmm. But Tesla himself claimed to be in daily communication with extraterrestrial intelligences who gave him this information. Mm-hmm. And he wrote about that. Right.
He was also receiving transmissions from Mars. Is that correct?
Well, that's what he called it. Mm-hmm. In those days, anything that wasn't from Earth was from Mars. They never heard of the Pleiades. They never heard of Tau Ceti. They never heard of any of that. So everything, if it was an alien, it was from Mars. So we have to look at that cautiously.
Yeah, very much so. That's fascinating. When I look back, it just amazes me how much technology we have. And then it's so sad to see it being misused. I mean, we could do phenomenal things if we would direct this energy in a positive way.
Oh, my God. We could heal every disease. We could solve the energy problems of the Earth. Absolutely. You're right.
And why didn't they turn it around? I mean, what is it about control manipulation that appeals to everybody? I just don't get that.
Well, look at the ancient times when there was a king and then there was the servants. There was nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
And the Illuminati have that mind pattern of being on the upper elite, and then there's only the servants underneath. They don't want anyone in between to rival them. Look at the back of the U.S. dollar, and you see that pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a space, and then there's the rest of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And that space means you do not come near our elite status. It is us only.
Mm.
And so, yes, it is about control, and power. And that's and basically trying to become their own God mind.
Mm-hmm.
Almost trying to become a god within a god, which is actually an insanity to think like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they're trying to do.
I agree. Yeah, it's almost like, well, when you say they're trying to like almost capture people's souls through some of this technology, I mean, but they're really not capturing. They're probably just taking like an imprint of the soul, but they're not really capturing the soul per se. Is that correct?
Well, they are electromagnetically containing the soul personality. Yes, they are.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but then again, it's not everyone. They basically can do this with people who are drug addicts, alcoholics, major illnesses, mental illnesses, people who have very, very weak energy fields and mind patterns. Those are the ones they capture.
Right. Yeah, it's still kind of spooky, and if you ask me, I mean, some of the stuff they're up to is just plain no good. But
none of it's good.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me when I think about a lot of this stuff. But I mean, scanning the state of affairs across the globe, I mean, what do you see for America in general?
Oh boy, Solaris!
I have to ask.
Well, the song that comes to mind is "The Party's Over."
Yep.
It's like goodbye. There is no more America. No, really, it's gone. The one I knew doesn't exist anymore and never will come back. Mm-hmm. Basically, you're going to see the breakup of the United States. And I can't say too much on the air, but the person who's in charge of the United States right now is a KGB agent, and is trained outside of this country to destroy it. Mm-hmm. And doing a pretty good job, too.
Yeah, Trojan horse type thing. Mm-hmm. I get that also. It's very interesting. With your connections to KGB and all this, I mean, you come from a spook central on your end. I mean...
Yeah, tell me about it.
How was it living around all that? I mean, were you followed a lot? Obviously, you had no privacy then, right?
Phones tapped to this day. Mail is open. People follow. I mean, listen, if I type the wrong thing on my computer, my internet goes out. You can't imagine. I've been pulled into bathrooms in public buildings, shown pictures of Soviet satellite pictures, and asked to explain it. In a men's room. I've been put in prison. I've been sitting on a train in Russia, traveling. It's like a movie. I was sitting on the Trans-Siberian Railroad at night in my own compartment, and a KGB guy comes in with a computer and sits down and starts telling me about my family. Okay, this is like a 007 movie. And I thought, okay, am I going to wind up on the roof of the train fighting with the agents, like in the movies? And it's like, I don't know. I never know what to expect. I'm sitting in China, in a restaurant in Shanghai in China, and the woman who I thought was a sponsor, she says to me, sometimes you could be talking to a Chinese special agent dressed like me. And I was like, where's the camera? Really? So, yeah, that's the story of my life, Solaris.
Oh, wow. Well, that means that you're something of an asset. Is that correct?
Or you could drop the last two letters.
Mm-hmm. I don't think so.
Thank you. Because sometimes I think, why? What the heck is all of this about?
Well, you have a lot of information, obviously. And
yes.
Considering your background and your lineage, my goodness, I mean, yeah, I can see why.
Well, that's the truth. And everywhere I go, where the people know about this stuff, I become, I don't know what you want to call it, a person of interest. I mean, I was once in Riga in Latvia, and I was getting on a bus. And in Latvia, you have to give a ticket that has your name on it to get on the bus. So I gave the ticket. I got on the bus. I sit down. I hear the matron stomping on the steps. She says, "Is your name Sverdlov?" I said, yes. I thought, okay, here comes my execution. I'm going to die in Latvia. And she waves my ticket in the air and tells the other passengers, "Is famous person on bus." And then she said, it's like, oh my God, I thought Latvians hate the Russians. because it was occupied. But everywhere I go in former Soviet republics, they actually have a great respect for Soviet Union. In fact, in Russia, I found out that my great uncle Yakov, and I didn't know this before I was there, he had executed over 1 million people. He was a ruthless dictator. And so I was doing my lecture in Yekaterinburg, the city where he ordered the death of the Tsar and his family. My uncle ordered the death.
Wow.
And I said to the people, I said, on behalf of my family, I apologize for all the death and destruction that my uncle caused here. You know what they said to me? Oh, forget about it. And
Mind control?
And then they said I should stay and run for president.
Wow. Is that mind control, though? I mean, how much of that is...
Well, I just couldn't even believe it.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when I was in St. Petersburg, one of the women who was sponsored for me there, she took me to the cathedral where the Romanov family is interred. And she said, now you apologize to them. And I did. So I, at least for myself, I cleared my energy, from my family and genetic perspective.
Right.
But boy, I tell you what, I keep finding out more stuff.
Wow, it's amazing. Yeah, I guess there are vows and contracts associated with families and ancestry. Would you agree on that or no?
Oh, yes. Well, this is a part of the soul groups that we travel with when we incarnate. And so, yes, it is like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Well, you seem like a decent fellow.
Oh, thank you so much, Solaris. I do my best.
I don't want to say I'll give you a green light because I don't want that to be a trigger for you, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, make it medium green. That's
okay. Yeah. It's interesting. I could go on and on about those things because they threw a lot of colors and codes and numbers and things like that with me. Serial numbers were big.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I was just trying to figure all that, but I'll have to talk to you. I'll definitely get sessions.
Well, on your birth certificate, there's a number, which is actually the stock on the stock exchange of your persona, and the numbers on there are associated with your trigger numbers in your programming.
Interesting. Check it out. I have to dig that out then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So obviously we're programmed from birth before we even enter onto the planet. Seems like we're subjected to some kind of program. Yeah,
well, now it's even inherited because when programming is imprinted 3 times, it becomes genetically induced. And they've even tested that with mice, for example. When they taught a mouse to get water from a little container in its cage, and they taught it 3 times, then the mouse had a little baby mice, and the baby mice were taken away from the mother, and without being taught anything, they knew how to get the water. So the programming that given to the mother, induced 3 times, became genetically part of the offspring, and then it can be passed on. And that's what we're experiencing in this generation.
That's almost scary when you think about it, because there's a lot of programming going on that's probably not so positive.
Correct, and some of it is also manipulated with illnesses. For example, we have a 400% increase in autism, especially in the United States, and that is purposely activating dolphin genetics, because back in the Atlantean time period, there were genetics of dolphins interjected with human genetics to create a hybrid race, which is considered to be more intelligent than humanity. So the Illuminati are afraid of this, and so by activating the dolphin genetics in people, which will create autism, they can then identify who has those genetics. And then they give them medications to make them dull, and then they have no problem.
Wow, one big master plan.
It is. It certainly is.
Yeah, it's just incredible when I look at all this. And what's happening with Russia right now? They seem like they're, it seems like they're doing better than the United States.
Those are my peeps, Solaris. They're my peeps. Don't you say nothing about my peeps. But I have said for years and years, Russia is now becoming a new Soviet Union. And, about 4 years ago, I don't know if you saw I did a live TV show in Finland. And in Finland, I was introduced to one of the ministers in the government. I guess she was Minister of Health. And so the host of the show, like, he was just trying to agitate everything, and he told her what to ask me. And she says, make a prediction for Finland. I was live television. And I said, okay, Soviet Union's coming back. And she gasped. She says, that is a serious accusation. And that's why Finland joined the EU, so we would be protected about this. So I said, well, you didn't do a very good job, did you? Because the Russians consider Finland a province. They don't recognize it as a separate country. And so what do we have now? We have Belarus, which has been pretty much reincorporated it back into Russia. Look at what's happened in Ukraine. It's basically Russians are going to invade again. We have in Georgia, the Russians are trying to take that one back in. The Armenians are in trouble. The Azerbaijan, it looks like they want to be reincorporated. My contacts at the KGB said to me, during Soviet Union time, it was so much easier to have trade between the countries because there was no border. She says, now, if I make buttons in one country and pants in another country, I have to go through all kinds of rules and regulations to put them together. She says, if Soviet Union comes back, I can put the pants all in one place. And so they have idealized a new Soviet Union. It will not be in the same way as the old one. But I will tell you, Soviet Union is coming back. And that is why Putin is being so brazen. He doesn't care what anyone thinks. That's why they gave Snowden asylum. That's why they gave citizenship to Depardieu, the French actor. They're just going on and on and on. And when I was in Moscow, I was taken to an underground nuclear facility underneath a housing complex in Moscow. I had to walk down 18 flights of metal stairs. That was a little bit triggering. But when I got to the bottom, there was this huge Soviet complex. And the part of what they showed me was a film recreating a Soviet attack on the United States. And I thought, what year is this? It's like I went back into the 50s and 60s. So you know what, Solaris? The more things change, the more they remain the same.
Right.
And I will tell you, Soviet Union's coming back.
I kind of get that too. Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, I have to say something. That America's really just not looking real good these days. I'll tell you that much. What happens to you when you start to get triggered? How do you alter that? How do you shift the program?
Well, usually Janet says, "What the heck's the matter with you? You change." She said, "That is not you. What are you?" She said, "What you were?" And yeah, we watch each other.
Good.
Because it's very easy to slip into something or be triggered and you don't know it.
Right, exactly.
Now, I've done like 20 years worth of deprogramming and I'm still not done. So I'm very well aware of my triggers. And but sometimes, if a trigger happens during a certain circumstance and I just don't care and I go into it, it could be a problem. And so thankfully, Janet will say, hey, you're acting strange. You're saying that, something that isn't right. You better take care of it. And then I look at that, and
Excellent.
So we watch each other.
Very good. And do you sleepwalk at all? You don't have any problems like that, do you?
I don't sleep, Missy.
Not when you're up here with me interviewing.
No. Well, that's why it's funny. So, it's such a late show. I'm like, so I'm up anyway. What's the difference? People say, what do you want to do for vacation? I said, I'd like to sleep. Because I don't do that. It's I can't remember the last time I really slept like a person.
Really?
Wow.
Well,
maybe 30 years ago.
My goodness. Well, I certainly appreciate you being on tonight. I'll tell you what, this time is flying too. I'm going to have you back. I hope you do come back. You're incredible.
Sure.
Hey, everybody. I thought I'd take up the dead air going on here until Solaris pops back. Which there's like less than 10 minutes left, but if she pops back in, I'll just hand it right over to her. But I thought I'd just give this up for the moment here. Man, that was I came into this whole thing at the top of the hour. I missed the first half of the show because I was out and about all day, but that was some pretty incredible stuff. You know what? I think that he may be right about this thing. He's not the first person I've heard spread the rumor of the rebirth of the Soviet Union. As Russia looks now, I think that I mean, it doesn't look like it would be a bad thing, you know, just because you choose to be a communist nation doesn't mean that you're evil. I mean, I certainly don't agree with those values, not the kind of value system I would want to live in, which is why I fight to change things here in America. But as far as things are concerned, with what's going on in Russia, I mean, like, I just hope things are good, you know, for them over there. You know, like they all seem pretty damn happy when, when the wall fell and everything else. So maybe they'll have the best of both worlds. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that there's a lot to be learned about what we don't know about our geopolitics on the surface, underneath the surface, and way down deep in the basement of history. So I would even recommend. I've mentioned this before. There's a movie that came out in 2012 called Branded, and it's a amazing kind of like indie kind of film, pseudo fantasy film about the occult aspect of the marketing industry, and it uses the example of post-Soviet Union Russia and how capitalism came to Russia through America, telling it through a special kind of fiction story. But it really kind of hits you over the head with all of the issues of the concepts of psychological conditioning, if you will, and showing that in a black magic kind of way. It's a very, very cool movie. I don't want to give it away, although you kind of get a sense of it when you watch like the trailer or something, because it shows some of the cool stuff. But you got to go through the story. It's great. It's really, really great. It's a lot of drama involved in it. It's definitely a stimulating film. So I'm looking here, and Solaris is still off. Odds are she's been cut off. I'd imagine that the very KGB they were talking about probably knocked her off the air. Oh, man. So such a bummer in that respect. So, you know, basically I'll just keep us going here till Dave and Mekki are ready to take the server. And of course I've just pulled this out of my rear end just to kill dead air for you guys. So, what to say? I definitely think that a lot of this, the stuff that this guy said is on the ball. I mean, it is no new conspiracy to talk about the concept of the Fourth Reich in Antarctica, hollow earth theory type stuff, as well as the issues of the aliens, quote unquote, agendas, so on and so forth. And, look, at the end of the day, what are you supposed to do? We got to worry about, the Russians want to have a piece of America. Europe and Britain want to have a piece of America. Brazil wants to have a piece of America. And, now aliens want a piece of Earth. It's like from every which way we go. And we have to work off of a combination of, not fearing change, but at the same time, not just changing because it starts off sounding like a good idea. And I think that we understand the second part, but sometimes I think that we don't understand the first part of what I said so much. I think it is always our impulse, because always the first time somebody says a certain kind of change is happening, it's always under a negative context, a negative pretense about, things like, the collapse of the dollar, this, the invasion of Mexico, that, So, well, granted, the invasion of Mexico isn't good one way or the other, but granted, Mexico's already invading, and that goes back to rivalries that go back all the way to England, France, and Spain, all being at each other's throats, as well as the Dutch and the Portuguese, I suppose. But at any rate, that's neither here nor there. The big difference is that we just have to be careful about things, because honestly, there are things that we think about going back to as better that also are bad at the same time. You know, just like it's very hard to go back to our actual organic constitution per se, right? Now that we realize everything about the Constitution and about the fraud that it is. So going backwards in that respect is something to worry about, because we're still setting ourselves up for some very interesting problems. And it certainly doesn't do any favors for, African Americans, just because of just the damn way they chose to create the organic constitution in the first place. And, one way or the other, we know that killing the 14th Amendment is critical to getting back to a constitution that would technically work. But then once you do that, you're creating all sorts of new problems, or also you're bringing back all sorts of old problems. We need a constitutional convention. And then I had a chat about that with somebody on the air, I think last night on the roundtable or whatever. And, that was getting naysayed, because we're scared. We're scared of each other. If we can't have the courage to have a constitutional convention, that just proves how unworthy of true freedom we really are, of true liberty, because we are certain that we are going to get fooled. And I disagree. The whole reason why anybody is calling for a constitutional convention right now is because they realize they've been fooled. And the only way anybody else is going to agree with that is by proving to them that they've been fooled. And when they get that well proven to be fooled, they're going to take the same precautions that you know how.
Listening to Revolution Radio.